Hi guys, I'm Grace.
And I'm Natalie, and this is Sunday Slipstream.
This is our first official podcast. We decided to just yap about all things F1. Very unseriously. Exactly. We have quite little qualifications. This is my first full year actually watching an F1 season.
And I pretty much only know about George Russell.
But it's even better that way because we just bounce off of each other and it's going to be super fun. So a tiny bit of background. I have a degree in automotive science and she has many degrees.
I have a lot of degrees. I'm currently working on a PhD. So
she can psychoanalyze all the drivers.
Yeah, it's a PhD in psychology. So that's pretty pertinent to mention.
So you get a little bit of background. So I feel like there's been so much drama, so we need to just dive right into it. Let's start with the Max and George drama.
The Max and George drama is stressing me out because I am a George Russell stan.
Okay, I genuinely feel like there is no problem besides Max has just been is going to be held accountable and he's not ready for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's to the point now where he's like, I've already won and everything else should just go my way because we know that Christian Horner also fights behind him.
Exactly. And I think George has been watching for a few races now. He's been getting annoyed, mostly because his car is really bad, but also just because he's been watching Max just like been able to get away with everything. Yeah. And then he was like, no, actually, you're not going to block me no matter what lap it's on. And we're going to go to the stewards together.
Yeah.
And Max is probably just upset that the stewards for once didn't listen to him since they're probably in Red Bull's pocket.
Honestly, it's so hard to like assume that they're not. Like,
exactly.
With all the stuff that Red Bull gets away with, but we're also kind of seeing this thing with the drivers where they're like the no more Mr. Nice Guy thing that like Charles Leclerc was doing a few weeks ago. It's almost like that's kind of the theme of the end of the season. Like this has been such a dramatic season with like everything with like Daniel Ricciardo and everything like the dynamics between Carlos and Charles and everything. It's just kind of like the no more Mr. Nice Guy, I'm not playing fair thing anymore. And it's almost like Max is taking it to an extreme.
You're right. I think everyone's kind of at their wit's end. Like, even Lando, I think there was an interview where he was just like, I'm so ready for the season to be over. Like, I think they're all just kind of like, okay, we're done.
This has been an intense season for them, honestly. It's like, Lando's definitely depressed. You can see it in every single interview that he does.
And he has every right to be. So going back to the Max and George, and then we'll skirt back on over to poor Lando, but I think circling back to that, Max is just kind of like win at whatever cost. And we're Penn State fans, and there was a quote.
I'm not.
Okay, she's not. You're right. I slandered you with that.
I'm offended.
Okay, and fan is like broad because I don't really watch Penn State football anymore. But whatever. Joe Paterno like had a quote where it was like, if you don't win with honor, you don't win with anything. And I'm a firm believer in that. And I think Lando and Oscar and I can't just name the McLaren drivers as a McLaren fan, but a few other drivers as well, Carlos, whatever. They're genuine people who like, I don't know these people, but I feel like their on-track performance shows that they want to win with integrity. And even Lewis 2021, that's debatable, but Lewis recently, even when he gets in his things with George on the track, like, there's actual fair racing. They're not trying to, like, dive bomb each other off the road.
No. And it's a little more aggressive than necessary. Like, I get that it's a sport and you have to be aggressive toward your competitors and everything. But it's almost like the kid who is, like, known to be a tattletale who gets tattled on for the first time and can't handle it. It's almost the exact same situation with Max, where he's just used to being the one who's, like, a teacher's pet. It's almost like if Toto were to start favoring George over Lewis. And then you know that Lewis would react negatively toward George. But Max does it to every other driver on the grid except Checo. Because Checo's so far behind him that he doesn't have to worry about him. He probably forgets that he's on his team.
Yes, because Checo, I honestly think, among other things, Checo is there to make Max look good. And because, honestly, he's so bad. So he's not a threat. And I think this whole season we've seen that I think Max believed in Lando more than Lando believed in himself, because the whole reason he was being like aggressive, dive bomby, whatever, is because he knew that he had the potential to win. And like, again, Max wasn't like seeing that he could win in like a nice way even. It's just like he knew, wait, you have the possibility to steal this from me. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I think Lando should have seen that as, wait, I need to kind of lock in versus like, poor guy. Kind of just like falling apart half the season.
Yeah.
But
going back to that kind of as a jumping point, that George has been doing so well the last few races. So it could just be like, oh, I need to like get this guy out of the way now too.
Right.
Lando's no longer a threat.
You're right.
You know, there's really no concern with Lando. Max already won the world championship over him, which Lando was so relieved that was over at the last race.
He was like, please stop talking to me about it.
After Vegas, he was just like, I'm so glad it's over.
That's literally the
But it's almost like George has been doing so well, which is kind of funny because Lewis complains about the car all the time. But it's almost like Max is like, okay, I need another person to pick on now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say I no longer respect this man who I've been working with to get the FIA accountable for their actions.
Yeah, he just needs someone else to be combative with. But yeah, that's probably it as well. And I don't know if this is true, but I'm pretty sure Mercedes have been favoring George with like parts and stuff. But either
he's been better at it than
exactly. And I actually, but not with like, not that he's getting something majorly advantage like over Lewis. I think Lewis is getting it as well. George is just getting it first. And also, there's not much that they have been doing because they're almost out of money. So
can you imagine the Williams team? They're like, what do we do this time? It's duct tape. Their budget has enough room for paper clips and duct tape. They're going to be driving like the invisible boatmobile from SpongeBob next race.
Yes. No, I literally said this the other day, but I was like, I sure hope that Carlos's check is like pre-written because there are no more funds.
There's no more money. They're going to have to get a personal loan. They're going to be asking you. They did. That's right.
Is that true? They took a loan
I
from
saw it.
the
I don't
FIA
know.
or something?
That would be
from
so
the board?
strange.
I'm like, how is that possible?
That shouldn't be allowed because there's a cap for everyone.
That was my question. If somebody knows, comment it. But
you think they asked Lance Stroll's dad?
Yes. Like,
for a personal loan.
They're like,
dear dad, dear Daddy Stroll. We know that your son doesn't like the sport anymore. Please give us money. We also have drivers who do not like to finish.
The way Williams has resorted to like going to shamans or something like that. I don't know if you saw that video.
Oh yeah, because like, Alex went to the temple.
Yes,
asked to pray.
They're at rock bottom.
They're
rock bottom
so
has
bad.
Been reached.
It's so bad. There's so many team issues right now. Like Mercedes has this whole thing with Lewis and Toto's like their drama right now. Like, Toto basically saying he's too old to race. And then like, Max said the same thing a few years ago. Yeah, it might have been a few years ago. It was recently, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. It was like, oh, once you hit 30, you don't want to be racing anymore. So like that's like a personal dig at Lewis and Fernando.
What did you say? He's gonna die.
Fernando Alonso is gonna die in that car. I'm convinced of it. Like, one, no one else wants to drive with Lance. And two, I don't think that they could get him to retire. They could give him as much money in the world as he wanted, and he's just like, no. I've got to be the oldest driver on the grid. It's almost like the same thing like Brad Pitt's trying to do. His stupid it's based off of Fernando Alonso.
That's actually so real.
But it's like every time like you see those fake like posts or whatever where it's just like, oh, Brad Pitt's character is the oldest racer on the grid or whatever. It's Fernando Alonso. Like
Fernando Alonso like called Brad up, was like, hey, do I have a plot for you?
Yes. Boy oh boy, do I have a story for you, Brad. There's so much drama between the teams. Like, you know, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz are fighting constantly. Mostly Carlos is just like standing by because he's like, I'm done after this race.
But Charles has, this is why, a little bit of psychology that I'm not a part of, that's more your thing, but a tiny bit of it is that's why I think that Max and Charles are able to be like such close friends.
They tear each other down?
Well, no, because they both have that complex you were talking about in the beginning, like the teacher's pet, or like everything goes, because Charles is used to being Ferrari's boy. Like,
he's their golden child.
And so the second something doesn't go his way, he's like, wait a second, what's happening?
But Ferrari's the only team that he's ever been with in F1. So it's his pet, basically, and he thinks that they owe him something. Like, oh, I'm your only driver that you've had for so long. I'm the one that you care about. I'm your number one seat. Like, and he makes them know.
That's true. And most of the time, unfortunately for him and Max, he does get his way. So he's used to it. And actually, Carlos wasn't explicitly told, like, you have to not fight Charles. I forget what the exact wording was, but it was just like, don't pressure him too much or something like that. So, Charles, actually you're a driver, so if you felt pressured by like Carlos going, just defend better. I don't know what to tell you. Like,
yeah, it's almost like drive better and your teammate won't be passing you. Like, if you want to be the best, then prove it.
Right.
Like, yeah. But there's so much drama on the teams, and then like with Alpine, like Esteban leaving, and like the rumor that he like unfollowed everything, Alpine and everything. He's not racing in the last race, and they didn't do like a send off thing like Ferrari's been doing for Carlos. Like you saw like the posts with Ferrari giving Carlos a cake and everything like that. Nothing for Esteban.
Yeah, apparently it was just it's so lackluster, which is kind of confusing because honestly, I know that both of those drivers have been fighting for years, but like they both have at least given something. Yeah, exactly. And that was like placated a few races ago for maybe an hour. I don't know,
but like they were so happy on the podium at Brazil because it was the first time they ever won. The whole season.
Poor guys. But yeah, I actually wonder what the tea is with that. Is it I'm just so like curious. Maybe he was told he could race to the end of the year and then they drew it back, so he's upset, or maybe there was just some tension in how they were like, okay, you're done. Like I don't know.
It's hard to say because there's no information about it.
Because he expected to leave. He's going to be on another team, so why is he so upset?
Why is he upset? Yeah. Unless he's doing like the clean break thing where like, oh, you stop working for a company, so you delete everything that you ever had to do with them, like when you started your job. Like it could be that, but it's a little weird.
Yeah.
Especially since the season's not over.
Exactly.
Like I know he's not driving in the last race, but he's still on their roster.
Exactly.
Unless it's like a contract thing with his new team. Like, I don't remember where he is.
Oh, yeah, he's going to Haas because people were going to be like, oh, he's going to tear up Ollie Behrman.
Poor Ollie. No, but yeah, it could be a contract thing. We don't really know because, like, it wouldn't be surprising if the teams are like, okay, you can't follow former teams or other teams as part of your contract because this is now your brand.
Yeah,
it's a possibility, but it's not the new season yet.
Right.
So it's a little unusual.
It's like what you just said about I don't remember, but basically it just reminded me about you just said about like and how Valtteri's now just posting whatever the heck he wants.
He just does what he wants. It's so funny.
Did you see that clip where he said he's like his merch line of like what's next, and like there was an interviewer asking him like what's next, and he was like, oh, this is something I'm doing for charity for people who recently lost their jobs, and he looks directly into the camera.
I did not see that, but what so a king move.
He was literally like, this is for, I'm donating every one of the funds for people who have recently lost their jobs, and he was just like
okay, I'm not gonna lie, I love that for him. He gives me the ick every time I see him.
It's the mullet.
It's not even it's the mullet and the mustache and the Speedos. It's just too much.
The butt calendar.
The man loves himself so much, it gives me the ick. It's just a little too much.
You're right.
It's just too much self-love. We said that Max is kind of narcissistic, but he's also narcissistic.
You're right.
But he's like narcissistic like in the Greek mythology where it's like staring at your own reflection until you die. Like
that also can be said for Fernando and Nico.
Oh my gosh. You know Nico Hülkenberg looks at the freaking mirror before every race and he's just like, you're beautiful, you're amazing, you're gonna win this race, you're not gonna finish last, you're gonna finish this race this time, you're not gonna DNF, and then he DNFs in the race. There's a beaver on the track. Oh my gosh. Smooth brain boy.
Okay, what's next?
Oh, well, we have to talk about Lando just a little bit. This poor boy. Yeah, there's so much. You can see just how much his mental health is taking a toll on him right now.
So much of it it's so frustrating because it's not him. It's literally bad team decisions. Max getting away with whatever, the FIA. There's just so many components this season.
And he takes it on himself every time.
Yes, and it's like, it's the debate of looking at like a Max who kind of, he's not as spoken about it as like Lewis, who's like, we gotta do better, or like not blame, they'll never publicly blame the engineers, but blaming the car, like this was wrong with the car, blah,
this
blah,
is the
blah,
car,
blah.
The car did this.
And I'm not saying one or the other is better than the other, to have one side where they just blame the car, or then to have Lando who only blames himself. Because they're both kind of unhealthy.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
It's just a matter of like, Lando takes everything on himself.
He does, every time he blames himself.
And I don't understand where the hate is coming from.
I don't understand why people are hating on him at all.
It's so weird. There's so many other people you could be pointing fingers at.
And I'm probably going to trigger people with this, but it's all the Max fans.
Yeah, that's true.
It's all the people who are diehard Max Verstappen fans.
Yeah.
They are the ones who are like, okay, Max has beef with Lando, I have beef with Lando.
That's true.
And it's almost like, oh yeah, let's just continue to tear down this guy who's been open about his mental health, about how he's been depressed, about how he doesn't have people that he can talk to outside of his team.
Right.
You know, it's really hard for him to have that barrier against what's going on in his work life compared to his regular life, because it's so consistently
and it's in his face all the time. Like he said, he's either on social media a lot or forced to delete social media because of all the comments. Yeah, you're right. And I think it's hard because Max is honestly it's almost giving gaslighty, where he's like, oh, whatever, he'll do whatever the heck he wants on track to Lando, and then after it, he's like, but we're such good friends. Like,
except for the fact that Lando doesn't fly with him anymore.
Yeah.
Air Max has been revoked.
It's actually so. But it's so probably, funny. And like, I get that they're coworkers. Like, I think people are they've even said themselves, people are taking the friend word way too far. But at the same time, you don't even have to call yourself work friends. Like, I think it would be easier for them if they just were like, not pretended to be friends, because then they wouldn't have to have the dynamic of like, oh, we have to fix this fight. Just leave it go.
There's a way to be friendly without saying you're friends.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's that distinction that, one, I think the fans do not acknowledge.
Yeah.
You know, they look at everyone and they're like, oh, Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, BFFs. Yeah. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, enemies. You know, like, oh, there's no way that like Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda are actually friends. Like, there's no way. But we don't know their personal lives. We don't know what their friendship groups look like outside of the track. We don't know what they interact with each other like outside of races. We only see what is in the media.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to determine whether or not what we're seeing is like genuine friendship, or if it's just work friendship, or if it's just being friendly so that there's not excessive drama on the track, because they're all there to do a job.
Exactly. And that's such a good kind of outlier of the whole thing, because I feel, who was it? Max? It was probably Max. Or no, wait, maybe it was Alex. One of the big mouths. Like, one of the big mouths. Who were talking to the media. It was a while back, but they made a comment about how it was only one pair of them. I don't remember who it was, but it was none of the main ones who you would think. It wasn't Charles or Carlos when they are being friendly. It wasn't, you know, Max and whoever. I don't know. Max and Daniel at the time. I don't know who it was, but it's like, they were like, most of them will never hang out outside the track. It's all like their own social media interns or whatever, kind of making it look like they're best friends. And that, I don't think that has to mean that they're enemies. They're just work friends.
They work together. They're in an active competition. It's like saying that someone like on the Kansas City Chiefs can't be friends with someone who is a Philadelphia Eagle. Exactly. Like the Kelsey brothers. You know, it's like, oh, you're saying they can't be friends because they're on opposing teams, but then they're brothers. Like, it's really odd that people have this weird dynamic situation. Like, it's one or the other. It can't be both. They can be friendly with each other. There can be drama, just the same way that you have a terrible coworker and you hate them.
Exactly.
And it could be one day you love them and the next day they piss you off and you're done.
Formula One is such a unique sport in the sense that your teammates are also your competitors. Like, and like at the same time, like, think of football, think of basketball, and I understand how, like, in football you have the Heisman, so somebody on your team is going up for a different reward potentially as you, but you're not directly competing with them at any point. But in Formula One you are, so you almost have to have that line.
Unless you're Checo and Max. Checo's just there to get sponsors. And I said this the other day, that Checo must be getting sponsors because he's the most average looking driver out of all of them. Right. Like, no one is going to believe that like Charles Leclerc is eating McDonald's. No one is going to believe that Carlos Sainz is eating Kit Kats. But you look at Checo Perez and you see his face and you're like, yes, he looks like a middle-aged man who has no life, and I want him for McDonald's.
He's leaving the track and he's grabbing a Kit Kat and watching Disney Plus or whatever the heck.
Whatever he's got, you know, like, he has so many sponsors. And it's so funny because like you see Max with like the Heineken sponsorship and stuff like that, like, but Checo has so many sponsors. Max.
Yeah,
and it's almost like, why is he on the grid? Because of his sponsors. Because he's average.
I saw a headline, I don't know if it's true, but they I don't know, I need to double check this, but they said that Checo should be done at the end of the season, but then below that it said that Checo came back again and was like, no, I'm not leaving. So I don't know.
I don't know if Checo is leaving or not. I don't know if it's just that they're going to move him to the RB team, maybe, because there's still a seat.
Oh, wait, yeah.
But it's still Red Bull. Which is another problem that I have.
Yeah.
Like, I have beef with that. Like, why can you have 2 Red Bull teams and just say, oh, one's RB?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. They're still the same company. Like,
right, everyone was getting upset again at McLaren for Zach pointing that out. How in Singapore, Christian had the opportunity. I don't know if he actually did this, or if Daniel actually wanted to go for the fastest lap to get a point and take it away from Lando, who previously had it. But how there is a potential that Christian Horner could just call up another team and be like, hey, do this for me. Yeah. That should be a problem.
It should
to
be
more people.
It should be a problem.
It's not Zach trying to, like, pick on another team. It's like, hey, can we just, like, actually call out a discrepancy here?
And then, like, the rumors that, like, the FIA is looking for a new president of the FIA and Christian Horner's an option for it? Okay, so, like, there's 2 Red Bull teams. Christian Horner could be leading the FIA. Yeah. There's so many problems with that because there's already favoritism that's being shown from the stewards, from everyone, even the commentators to this point. Yeah. Where it's like, Red Bull is a major name. Yeah. It's an international name that is known for, like, extreme sports at this point. You know, like, they're the guys who sent the guy into space to do the base jump. You know?
Yeah. That's crazy.
They are so well known that no one wants to be on the bad side of Red Bull.
Right.
And it's almost like we get Red Bull in there too many times and no one else has a chance. And that's what it's looking like right now. And I can only imagine what it would be like if Christian Horner was part of the FIA itself too.
Christian Horner already has enough of a time running
on his plate.
Team.
But there's another thought though, like, does Checo have dirt on him? Like, is that why he's still here?
Literally, people are saying that because it's just like, Christian Horner has let so many people go for so much less.
Look at Daniel Ricciardo.
Exactly.
Like, Danny Rick was still so good.
Exactly. And I don't...
Not even letting him finish the season even, and then you still have Checo who can't finish races beyond, like, what, P10.
Did you see that? There was a graphic and it was like 4 points, and it was Checo hasn't scored 4 points in, like, the last 4 races.
It's so bad.
Zhou Van Yu, Precious King, scored more than him in the last 4. It's just like...
Okay, but let's not talk about how that was his first points for the team.
And freaking Pierre got into P5 again.
We love Pierre Gasly.
What a king. There was I don't know how, but I do know there was a clip, I don't know how accurate it was, of them literally, like, you know those, like, tools at the dentist where they're, like, filing?
Like a bone saw?
Yes, that's what they were using on, like, the back of the wing. I was like, what is happening in that garage?
I don't know if that's legit or not.
Yeah.
Because I also just saw a picture where it's like, was someone just using, like, duct tape on one part? But, like, at this point, I would not be surprised if Williams has resorted to duct tape.
Yes, everyone is actually,
the redneck mechanic fix.
Yes, everyone is encroaching on their cost cap this season.
It's really
except
bad.
for freaking
Pierre Gasly.
What a king.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love that his goal is just to not have any wrecks.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, I don't even care what I do.
Yeah, and I mean,
he's like, that's a title I can do.
Exactly.
He has 1 race left where it can screw up.
Like, come on.
He has 1 race to make this happen.
Good juju for Pierre. Like, let him finish the season well.
Not pulling a Franco Colapinto.
We have to set the bar somewhere. Yeah, has Franco Colapinto been too fluffed up? He's such a king. We love him. But
I love his personality.
Was he boosted up too quickly? And, like, is it just because his Argentine fans were just, like, so happy to have him in the grid? Or was there actual merit to back up this kid is amazing? Right. But then we have to look at the past few crashes have been not his fault. So I don't know.
Yeah,
is it bad luck or is it just new driving? I don't know.
It's hard to say because, like, if he doesn't get a seat next season, what's going to happen to this kid?
It's astronomical, though, that he wouldn't be able to get a seat. But then Lance Stroll's still around.
Like, but Lance Stroll's dad owns the team. He's never going to lose a seat.
Yeah, I know, but it's just that discrepancy is so frustrating. Because it's like, how can we call this the pinnacle of motorsports when Lance Stroll can just decide he doesn't feel like driving anymore and take himself back to the club? Like, it's just...
It's a weird situation, like, with Colapinto, because he's clearly, like, a good driver. Yeah. It's just, is his skill set fit for what he's doing right now? Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Is he too green for what they're doing? Yeah. And it's hard to say because there's been so many accidents the second half of the season.
On everyone, so you can't even blame him. And George had a crap ton in the beginning of the year. So, yeah, I mean, anyone can have a crash. It doesn't necessarily mean one thing or another. Yeah. And he'll have time to, like, sim race and stuff over break. Yeah. Or whatever the heck they do. But I hope that he gets to see, arguably, actually, I don't know. I was going to say, is he better than Liam Lawson? But they both have kind of had the same limited time on the grid, so I don't know.
Neither of them has really, like, proven themselves, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think both of them have hit that point where it's like they're known, but mostly by the fans and the media. Yeah. They haven't been able to prove themselves on the track.
On the track, yeah.
We have so many drivers who are so exceptionally skilled.
Yeah.
You know, like, even, like, you can say what you want about, like, how old Fernando and Lewis are, but they're better drivers than them.
Yeah.
They've got the experience. Yeah. Sure, their dexterity might be limiting because of age at this point, but the younger guys don't have the experience yet.
And that always counts for something, no matter what you're in. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Liam Lawson has, like, a bad go of it because his teammate hates him. So you know that there's drama on the team. Yeah. You know, there's no way that, like, Liam Lawson is actually able to do well in a headspace during a race.
In both the Mexicans. Like,
oh my gosh.
Through the Spanish people.
He did that to himself with Checo. he pushed that with Checo a little too far.
That's
like true. With the whole thing during the GP in Mexico. Like, he did that to himself a little bit. But when every Spanish speaker on the grid refuses to speak to you, you know you've done something. Like, he's a little abrasive as a personality to begin with, which is understandable. You know, like, not everyone's gonna get along with everyone, and you're not on your team, so it's fine. His current teammate already hates him. Yeah, it's already a bad situation.
Right.
We don't.
But
really
does
know.
Yuki really like anyone?
Pierre Gasly.
I guess that is the word
Pierre,
on the
but who doesn't love Pierre other than Esteban Ocon?
It's just an infinity circle. Okay, so with all of this kind of encapsulated, how do we feel Abu Dhabi's going to play out? I think I saw, what was the graphic? It was like, 14 points to play, I believe it was. And
it's tight for the constructors title
because the whole
of the penalty.
Organization of the FIA needs completely rewritten.
It really does.
I saw a take the other day. It wasn't my take, but I found it really, like, an interesting talking point about how, if this is what we're calling the pinnacle of motorsport, should that not be embarrassing that there's such discrepancy with the rules? Like, if this is the pinnacle of anything, we should have some type of regulation or something that people can expect. Okay, this penalty means this consequence. Like, not just whatever somebody feels it's a day. Like, how do we not know that the FIA person who, anyone can claim to be unbiased, but everyone knows people are inherently biased. Like, I can talk however I want about how something went, but I'm biased towards McLaren a little bit. I'm biased towards I'm biased towards Precious Carlos, you know? And so, like, anyone can be biased. So, like, how do we know that an FIA person one particular day just doesn't like a driver? So they're just like, oh, points here. Or an FIA person wants more ticket sales, so they want to make a certain rivalry go one way.
Or this person is being bankrolled by Red Bull. Like, we don't know like what all of the background information on it is. And without that standardization of a sport, you have these issues where, like, you will never be able to extend your fan base beyond the people who have already been loyal to it. Yeah. Because most of the people who have recently become F1 fans are here for the drama, not for the sport.
Yeah, because they all came on, well, not everyone, but most people from Netflix, like Drive to Survive.
Yes, they're here for the drama, not necessarily for the sport. Yeah. Because you have soccer as a sport that goes across the entire world, and you can play a World Cup, and everyone knows that it's going to be played the same way for every team because there are standardized regulations and rules. However, you do not have that with F1. You have rules that can change just because the stewards decide something different that day. You have rules that can change based off of how severe they think a penalty needs to be. Even though this penalty for Lando was so harsh, 10 seconds for a yellow flag that was so hard to see for anyone. And every driver behind him would have had to get the same penalty.
And even when Max said he slowed, it was like a brake tap. It wasn't even like a yellow flag that was so clear, like, oh, you blew right through that. No, it was like a brake tap, and then he, like, then you could go fast. Like, it wasn't even, I don't know.
Well, and not only that, but, like, why is Max paying so much attention to someone having such a minimal discrepancy
because
the whole time?
That's the only way that he can... Lando was about to pass him, and he didn't want to have a fight. So, I mean, okay, we're not saying that if you break a rule, you shouldn't get punished. Sure, Lando should have gotten a penalty, but it shouldn't have been any more
than 5 seconds that Max got last time.
Exactly. And it's just crazy that you can have a motorsport that's so well known, that's so well funded, and just have these issues time and time again, because it honestly is going to ruin... It's not going to ruin the sport. It's always going to be around, but it's going to ruin people's enjoyment of it 100%. Like,
it's really difficult to maintain a fan base whenever they can't follow the rules themselves.
Yeah, that pretty much is it.
You know, you want to know what you're getting into when you watch a sport.
Exactly.
You want to know what to expect. Oh, I saw so-and-so while I was watching the race miss this flag.
Right.
I saw this person hit this debris. I saw something happen here.
Yeah.
And I know what's going to happen to them.
Exactly.
You want that predictability with a sport.
Yes.
You need to know that to enjoy it as a fan.
Yes.
You know, the FIA, they do it every single day.
Right.
You know, they know what they're looking for, but they're not paying attention to how irregular their calls are. And that's part of, like, the accountability thing that we're trying to seek from them.
Yeah, that's it.
You know? Like,
just, yeah. And the drivers, when I didn't know this till a few weeks ago, but the drivers have to pay, like, I think millions of dollars to even have their supercar license every year. So it's like, and that was raised up in the, what is it, the George, no, I love how we're just assuming it's George, but the GDPA or something.
Yeah, the other group that the drivers are doing.
Yeah,
you know.
That was called out to them. It's like, we're giving, so much money is going through, can we have some discrepancy on where it's being used?
Yes.
Because how are all of them paying millions of dollars to even have their license, but yet the stewards aren't getting paid?
Yes, which is another thing. Like, there's no way that the stewards aren't getting some sort of incentive for doing it. No one just volunteers their time in order to watch an F1 race. You know, like, they're rich guys. They don't care.
Exactly.
Like, they can watch it whenever they want.
Exactly.
It's a little odd that they're volunteers, which is another problem with regulation. You know that in other sports, there are referees who are paid to get training in order to make sure that the calls are being accurate and consistent.
Exactly.
You know, soccer referees have to go through training whenever they're doing, like, FIFA World Cup stuff. Like, FIFA refs are so much more well trained, the same way with NFL refs and college football refs.
Exactly.
These people are all trained and exact in what they're told. There are handbooks for these sports that a fan can look up and say, oh, I know how this is going to play. I know what a first down is because it's the same in every single game.
Right.
You know, but we don't have that with the FIA because the stewards, they rotate. They change every race. We have people who are obviously going to show favoritism depending on where they made their money. And we don't have standardized regulations for penalties. We don't have standardized regulations for the way that certain things need to be handled. Like, debris being on the track should have been an automatic safety car.
And you can't use the excuse of Lando being unsafe when you let that go for, what, 4 laps?
For 2 punctures?
That's like, exactly. That's crazy. And, like, on your point, I think it was said by Gunter Steiner or somebody in the... Gunter Steiner was talking about something that the FIA, an excuse they had, and that was the fact that, oh, the stewards would have to travel all year, or whatever, and I was actually
as if the drivers don't.
Exactly. And I was talking to other people in motorsports, when I was at the Vegas Grand Prix, she's a something engineer, I don't know, but she travels with teams, and she's like, on American circuits, and she's like, compared to NASCAR races, compared to other races, or other motorsports in the US, F1 has so many breaks, like, even within their season. Like, what did we have, like, a 2-month, 3-month break, like, just 2 weeks ago, or whatever it was.
Yeah, so it's a really long break.
On
right
top
before
of
October.
Their busy season, it's not even... And they also have, a 4-month winter break. And then within the season, you have so many breaks. So it's like that, you can't even use that as an excuse.
No, you really can't.
And also, the people who are going to sign up for it are going to love traveling. They're going to love that aspect of it. So it's like, oh, poor you get to go to Abu Dhabi. Like,
oh, no, you don't get to ride on your yacht 5 days a week, just 4.
Exactly.
It's to this point where it's like, we do need these regulations. We need stewards who are paid to do the job well.
Yes.
And we need people who go through training in order to do the job well. We can't just have casual rich guy fans coming up and saying, I think that Lando deserves 10 seconds. Like, because you know, like, if George and Max had to go in and plead their case that shouldn't be a thing. There should be no reason that the drivers need to go plead their case.
Right.
If it was a regulation
exactly.
rule.
A rule.
Yes, like a coach, for example, can go and object to a ref's play decision. You know, of course. And that could still happen if it was regular. But the driver shouldn't be doing it.
Exactly.
The driver shouldn't be doing it because you know that Max gets on the horn and he's just like, Lando deserves a penalty because I got a penalty.
Right.
It's so stupid because there's no way to prove that it's fair for every driver.
Exactly. On your point of like making it enjoyable for the fans, I literally saw a video the other day that was somebody who was like in motorsports, and she was introducing motorsports to one of her friends, and they were watching a race together, and she was like, oh, that happened, shouldn't they have gotten that penalty? She was like, yeah, they should have, but they got this one. And she was like, and that happened in so many races she was watching with this one friend, and she was like, it began to get so embarrassing where it's like, yeah, this is how the sport should go, but yeah, we don't know if it's gonna go like that every race. And it's like, how can we have something like that when we're calling this like the best in the sport? Like, it's just you know,
there's no way to show that anyone is actually well suited for the sport if the sport itself is not taken care of properly.
Exactly. And I mean, the sheer fact that they had to start the GDPA shows that, and the sheer fact that like Max was in the same group as George Russell, like, proves that they all were frustrated. They themselves are frustrated enough with the situation.
Well, Lewis was worried about the jewelry.
Yeah. And somebody, probably Lance Stroll, was worried about the underwear.
He was like, I don't like that they're fireproof.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. That's because you never DNF. And that's because you always DNF. I'm sorry, sir. You never have to worry about fire.
Exactly. You're not even on the track.
Oh my gosh. It's so bad.
Yeah, but it's just like, this is
finish a race and then tell me how you feel about them. Like,
yeah, I don't. That is a whole situation that it's never going to be remedied unless do they get will their sponsors, are they ever allowed? I don't know how the sponsorship works, or like the hierarchy within the team of sponsors, but like, is it going to get to a point where the sponsors are like, we will pull out if you keep him on track? Like, I don't know.
Who knows? Like, I don't know how the sponsorship works. Like, I don't know if like they donate so much money under certain contractual conditions or anything like that. I don't know how that works. I think the whole point with like the GDPA stuff is that there are things that the FIA is so strict on, but then they don't know their own rules.
Literally. Like,
oh, you guys are going to get this amount for swearing in the press, but you could get a 20-second penalty, you could get a 5-second penalty, you could get a 30-second penalty for the same thing, one race and then not the other. And it could happen to the same driver multiple times.
Or there's even favoritism in the sense that when Max swore, got his penalty, then he had to like be on the horn because he always is, but like, where's Charles's penalty? Because he didn't get it right away like Max got it right away. And then it was only after Max like made a fuss about, wait, why didn't he get a penalty, that he then got a penalty. So it's like, there's even favoritism in that. Not that I'm not pro Max getting penalties, but
I think that they all deserve the same penalty. Exactly. That's really what it's coming down to. They all need to be treated exactly the same way. You know, like, yes, like Max swore and he had no remorse for it. Absolutely. Like, that's a problem. Absolutely. And, you know, people are like, well, Charles Leclerc, he was like so like shocked that he said it, like he was worried about what he was going to say, you know. But then you also have people like George joking on the couch with the other guys where I can't remember who it was who swore. He's like, that's a fine. You know, like, it's a joke because it's so not ridiculous. Consistent. It's so inconsistent. There's no way that there's a consistency with everything when there's no consistency even with the rules of the sport. You know, like, they can be strict as they want on, oh, you have to wear this specific brand of fireproofs, you have to wear this specific brand of shoes or whatever, you know, like, or you can't have this much jewelry on during the press, which is kind of stupid. Like, your team should decide that, or your sponsor should decide that. You know, if you have a sponsor who does like Swiss wristwatches, for example, they might want you to wear multiple timepieces, which should be allowed. Because after the track, the FIA should have nothing to do with everything else. Like, of course, there's some things that they should be responsible for. The same way the NFL is responsible for like the players who refuse to do their press. Of course. Like, of course, they still get fines, and absolutely, there's still some of it, but minimal things like jewelry and like stuff like that really shouldn't matter. Because no one's paying attention to it as much as the sponsors are.
And that's actually part of driver's personality that the fans love that brings more interest into the sport.
Try telling Lewis Hamilton that he can't go all out and match with his dog.
Like his vegan dog. Don't get me started. That's
We're not getting started on Roscoe being vegan. Give that dog some meat.
Yeah, but yeah, I think hopefully all of these, I mean, they all can't be evened out, but hopefully we have some fair stewards for Abu Dhabi, because let's just please let McLaren get their first Constructors' Championship in like over 10 years. I think over like this decade or something.
Honestly, I wouldn't know.
No, it was something like
it's a while,
the first
though.
time in this decade or something.
It's a long time coming.
And they, I think they've deserved it this year. They've proven themselves. Ferrari's kind of been nowhere for a while. Not that that should mean one thing or another.
Ferrari's going to have it in for them next season. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Speaking of drama,
and that's
two big personalities.
Yeah.
Like it's almost the same dynamic where like Max is such a big personality and Checo is a minimal personality.
Yeah.
And that's what works with Ferrari right now, with Charles Leclerc being so big and so upfront and in your face, and Carlos just kind of standing in the background. You know, it's a great dynamic right now, and it's been the same pretty much for Mercedes with Lewis and George. Lewis has kind of been like the golden child for a while until he started decreasing in performance.
Just like kind of capitalizing on that, because he's been a little egotistical recently, which is like King George. Like we love King George. I don't really have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I think it's just like the egos are gonna clash. Yeah,
he's my king.
Yeah, like. Yeah, I think Ferrari's going to have, and Charles himself is going to have a very rude awakening next year, because these are two drivers who are used to being like the only child, even though they aren't the only child. They're used to being the only. Yeah,
they're the favorite. They're the oldest son. They're the ones getting the birthright.
And we've seen this year where McLaren says, "Oh, both of our drivers are equul." We've seen how that works out. No, they're not. At some point, there's going to be a decision.
You know, that decision that Lando made to give Oscar during Qatar.
But that's because at some point McLaren had to make a decision to prioritize Lando. So you can't actually go into it saying both of you are equal, because there's going to be decisions where you come down to the wire. One of you is going to have to benefit. Who's it going to be? And you can't actually just blanket statement because no one can be equal in a sport.
It's like parents saying they don't have a favorite child, but you know they do.
Exactly. And in this situation, you can't really have two favorites, because somebody has to cross the finish line first.
Exactly.
So it's just going to
like you said, though, they're competing against each other in their own team and then against other teams.
Exactly.
It's like, who do you choose to compete against first?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the fact that at the end of the day, all these drivers have their personal egos, have their personal biases, as every human does. So it's like, no driver is going to be okay with sitting back and letting someone else cross it, unless you're freaking Lando.
They're sports.
Exactly.
It's a sports team. And like on the grid, though, Lando doesn't seem like he is willing to take it either.
Exactly.
Like he's an aggressive driver.
Yes.
He's a sportsman-like driver.
Yes.
Absolutely. But the thing is that the reason why he seems to take it on himself so much is because he puts that pressure on himself to do better.
Yes.
I don't think Zach Brown is doing that to him.
Oh, no. Precious Zach.
He's a dad.
And
just
like
such a dad.
Carlos called him in the media a few days ago. He was like, Lando is just a gentleman on and off track, and that's he wants to, like anyone would, or like I think the right person would, not Max, but I feel like everyone wants to know, okay, I won this fair and square. I didn't have to bully anyone off track to get this title. And like there can be problems with the car, absolutely, and that's one thing that Lando doesn't do, is he doesn't acknowledge that not everything is his fault. Exactly.
But he takes it on himself a lot, considering he's a really good driver.
He's trying to take it on himself before the fans do, or before Max's army does, because it's getting ridiculous, because it would be one thing if he was doing things to invoke the conversations, but it's just at this point I'm like, okay, why are people still hating? I'm actually confused.
I really don't understand the Lando Norris hate. Again, like I said, I think it's just Max Verstappen fans.
You're right.
If Max doesn't like someone, everyone who likes Max is automatically going to dislike them. You know? Yeah, there's conflict between the two of them because they're both great drivers. They were in a competition.
Exactly.
They're still racing against each other. They're direct competitors.
Right.
Red Bull and McLaren fighting against each other is normal.
Right.
It's not uncommon.
I think people need to... Some of the British fans need to like watch American sports and be like, you have kind of a rare thing going on. I think
that's another thing that we consider is there's a lot more American fans now.
Yeah.
The American fan base has increased significantly.
True.
Not to like the point that European fans are, because a lot of American people are still into like NASCAR, and if they're into Formula racing, it's IndyCar.
You're right.
It's not quite F1 level yet.
You're right.
Even though there's U.S. races and stuff like that, and there's U.S. Drivers and everything like that, it's really not a U.S. sport. It's a very similar situation, like you said, though. Like, American sports are regulated.
Yep.
And the fans for American sports know what they're expecting when they watch a sport. And that's why it's so difficult for American fans to wrap their head around what's going on in F1 right now.
Yeah.
There's really no rhyme or reason to the sport. Imagine, like, me just coming in because I just like George. And I know nothing about the sport. I can't learn it.
Right.
I can't go home and study it and figure out what's going to happen in the next race.
That's actually so true.
We don't know what to expect as fans. We don't know what to expect in F1 compared to what we expect in the NFL.
Right. We know that, like, if you target a player, you're getting out of the game, you're getting benched, or whatever it might be.
And even, like, F1 is different than F2 and F3. And the American fan base coming in and seeing the discrepancies in regulations mean a lot. And I think the American fan base is more into the sport than the drama.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, the European fans are more into the drama of the drivers.
Yeah. Actually, I would think that's opposite.
You think that's opposite?
I would argue that to be opposite.
You think so?
I don't know.
It's hard to say.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we can't really blanket statement a whole
We really can't. European fans are used to it, though.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. They're used to this sport that doesn't have these regulations. They're used to it because it's been the same for years. Like, the same in that there's nothing the same.
And I think we're only having this conversation now because this is the first year in many years that so many teams were equal. Like, many teams had a fighting chance. Before, there was Mercedes was dominant, Red Bull was dominant, and no one else had a chance. And now that we're seeing, some of these decisions are coming down to the wire, what are we going to pick? Now, wait a second, why is that rule like that? And I think this is the first time in a while that people have had to look at the rules closely. Because it's the first time in a while we've had multiple race winners. Yeah, that's true. And, I come in and I know nothing. I'm completely incompetent about F1. Like, I can talk about this all day and have no idea what I'm saying. No, but you've learned a lot.
People listening into the podcast are going to be like, she's an idiot. She's a dumb American. She knows nothing. And I'm kind of, like, hoping that they correct me so that I can actually learn what's going on.
Yeah, same.
Because, like, at the same time, like, I can say this all day and say, oh, they need regulations and stuff like that. And that's something that other people are saying.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I don't know the sport that well. So maybe I wouldn't think this if I knew it better.
Same. Yeah, I agree with that. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think we're just in a point where it's just like people want to keep learning. We want to keep the discussion open. But everybody, the drivers themselves even, are at a point where it's just like, okay, we got to fix something. And hopefully it gets wrapped up by 2026. I don't think there will be many changes
before Cadillac comes in.
Yeah, Cadillac.
I mean, as an American, I want to get a job with them so I can work for that for F1.
Okay, so we wrapped up the past few weeks ish.
We didn't really give our predictions for Abu Dhabi.
Now we're closing it out with our podium predictions for Abu Dhabi.
Predictions for Abu Dhabi. Who's your fantasy podium?
Fantasy podium, Lando, Carlos, Oscar.
Okay, what's your realistic?
Lando, Max, Charles.
Okay.
They've been good.
Yeah, they've all been doing really well.
Lando only if they can, because McLaren all season they've had the best car, so they have the potential. It's just a matter of circumstances again, unfortunately.
Max is gonna push penalties.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Max, unfortunately, they have fixed their car, so they're probably going to be up there. I mean, I don't actually know the similarities between the Qatar track and the Abu Dhabi track. I know the Qatar track, it's the driver's favorite because apparently it's the fastest of the year. But I don't know.
It's got a lot of good grip.
Exactly. So I don't know if I don't know anything about the Abu Dhabi track. But yeah, I don't know if Red Bull's issues are over right now or either way, Max is going to get that car into the points, so it's just a matter of where. So, yeah. Anyway, you.
My fantasy, I always put George first.
Yeah, George is going to be
George is always first. And then I actually feel like P2, I would say Carlos.
Okay.
And then P3 for my fantasy would be Pierre Gasly because he's actually been doing well and I love him.
Yeah, Pierre deserves another.
He deserves another podium. But realistically, I do think it's going to be Max, Lando, and Charles Leclerc.
Okay.
Somewhere in that order. I don't know which order it's going to be in.
Sure.
But I'm hopeful that it would be Max last.
Yeah. No, you're right. Max is probably going to be able to pull another one out, unfortunately.
Yes, I do think that he could pull out another win. But one of my goals, though, is that George is going to play harder.
Yeah, because George is pissed. So
he's jacked.
Actually, I hope George and Max hold each other up so that Lando and Oscar can...
Yeah, and Pierre.
And Pierre, right? Yes. Wait, wouldn't that be so sweet for poor Pierre?
Okay, but also... He doesn't have to fight with Esteban this race.
Exactly.
His headspace is going to be so clear.
He's like, smooth brain, even smoother. Yeah, that's actually...
Smooth brain, smooth drive.
So funny. Okay, wait, I love Pierre, but I kind of wanted Carlos to have one last kind of like...
I want him to be on the podium one more time.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, like, George, Carlos, and the Pierre for my fantasy. But realistically...
No, I forgot about him.
Realistically, I think it's going to be Max, Lando, and Charles.
Yeah.
But...
And I think Charles...
With a chance of George being on the podium. Because he's been
pushing. With a chance of George Russell.
He's been pushing so hard.
He has been able to get it up.
He's been so close. He was 4th last time.
Yeah.
He was 4th
with as bad of a car as Lewis Hamilton.
Anyway. Such a baby.
Yeah, literally. Okay, wait, you're right. Okay. Well, guys, those are our podium predictions. We're going to try and do that every single episode. Obviously, we only have one more left. And then maybe we'll cover the driver's winter break activities. That could be interesting. We can cover so much. There's so much with the FIA that we still need to hash out. Yes.
There's still so much with the drama between the drivers.
And there's going to be so much breaking because they still have to finalize. You're right. There's still an empty seat. They still have to finalize who's going where. So we can still...
Because there's still a chance that the seats can change.
Yeah,
the season hasn't started.
You're right.
Like, what if someone decides that they want Carlos?
Somebody better do that because I swear to God...
Because Williams is going to give him air for his next car.
They're like, here you
go.
His
next car is going to be a roll of duct tape and a few paper clips, and they're going to be like, do with this what you will.
Yeah.
And he's such a smooth brain boy. Yeah, all the lights are not on in that house of his that he's just going to look at it and be like, okay, I guess this is what I've got. Meanwhile, Alex Albon's going to be like, I have a steering wheel. And it'll turn into a meme. The whole thing with Williams is a memeable team at this point.
You're so right.
It's so bad. Williams has nothing. Yeah. They're gonna be like, Lance Stroll, do you want to be on our team so that we can get your dad's money?
Wait, they're almost at rock bottom that has to be an option.
They're like, okay, wait, Cadillac is coming on the grid. We can absorb it into Lance Stroll's team. Daddy Stroll, give us money.
Yeah, Daddy Stroll, please.
They're like, wait, we know that Lance doesn't want to drive anymore. Let's see how early he DNFs in this race. What do you think that Lance is going to finish the race in Abu Dhabi?
That actually is the fact that that's a question that we have to have.
Do you think he's going to DNF or not?
The past few races, it seemed almost like he's actually made a conscious decision as like, oh wait, I don't really want to do this anymore.
Yes, like I'm done. I'm going to drive into the gravel pit in Brazil.
The way it could be like a 60-40 as to if he even feels like finishing,
honestly,
should not be a conversation for a driver that is comfortable in his seat.
Yeah, like, Lance Stroll has an easier time DNFing a race than I do DNFing a book. Yeah. Like, at least I'll try to finish it. But he's like, I'm on lap 8, I'm done. Yeah. I'll serve my penalty and then I'll go back.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, I'm done.
Yeah,
like 10 more seconds on the track is torture for me.
Wait, he's such a tortured artist, actually, but he's not an artist. He's just tortured.
He's just Canadian.
Yeah. That if someone doesn't rescue Carlos, like this is my official plea, like please. No, but when he came out, I would want him to go on Red Bull for the notoriety, but I wouldn't want him to have to deal with Christian Horner. But
I feel bad for anyone who deals with Christian Horner. So
genuinely, because in the beginning of the year when Carlos like officially signed, he was all like, the wording of it was giving, this was the only team that allowed me to have an out clause. And so it could be in the fact that like maybe if the season does start he can train, but that's still sad. I hope he gets a good seat before then.
I hope he gets a good seat before then. Like there's so much that can happen before the next season even starts.
Lando himself was like saying, like to the media, Carlos should have gotten that Red Bull seat. Like I don't understand why. Obviously that's a conversation that's long since passed, but I don't really understand, even if the contract was weird, why you wouldn't take it for just like a year or something. I don't know.
No, but, like, and I have a feeling that like Lewis Hamilton's only going to be in Ferrari for 1 year.
Yeah.
I feel like he's doing this as his like retirement send off.
I mean, yeah, he's
because like Fernando's never going to retire and he's going to die in that car.
Right.
But Lewis wants to retire so that he can continue feeding Roscoe broccoli.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, mean, when a team offers you $400 million, I guess you would be like, yeah, I guess.
Well, he said he wants to be in Ferrari for at least one season.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to wear red at least once.
It better not be longer than one season. I'm gonna cry. Be like, why?
I don't think that he and Charles are going to be able to survive. I think that they're just going to either kill each other or one of them's going to quit.
Yeah.
Like, I would not be surprised.
Well, it's like Lewis, like, poison Charles's food with just like all his vegan broccoli. Charles thinks he's having a nice Italian steak. Like mushrooms.
Just mushrooms and it's so sad.
I'm dead.
No, but there's so much that we can still talk about even when the season is over because the next episode we're gonna have to rehash one, everything that happened during the race, and two, all the drama that you know is inevitably going to arise from these little rich boys fighting with each other.
Because this is like the last push that they can yell at each other before they sail away. So something's gonna go down.
Imagine the top picks for the constructors title don't score any points.
Wait.
Like, can you imagine?
That would be crazy.
Like, what would happen? Like, imagine, Esteban's not racing, but imagine,
Pinto and, like, Pierre
and somehow Zhu.
I would eat that up for them.
Oh my god.
I'd be like, okay, Kings,
like,
podium.
Can you imagine?
Wait,
There's we don't know what's going to happen.
Because we're finally in a season with so many possibilities, which makes it so exciting.
much that can happen.
I can't imagine being an F1 fan last year where Max was the only winner. That would have made it so boring. I think by like Title 3 I would have like turned off the sport. I would DNF F1. I would like, you know what, I cannot watch this
like,
one more
time. I've won enough.
Yeah, it's like no, I just like as a fan I wouldn't have watched it anymore because like that makes it so boring. The fact that we can look forward to a race where anyone could be on top.
We don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Like, especially with all the beef that's going on right now. Like, I can't imagine how intense free practice is going to be. There's no sprint this race.
Wait, you're right.
So it's just going to be free practice and quali. And who knows what's going to happen? Like, how many cars are actually going to make it to the track? Is my question. Is it going to be like Brazil?
Williams is just spraying the car there at this point.
They're like, please don't let Franco drive. He's just bad luck. He's their bad luck charm. He's the epitome of like building your house on an ancient Indian burial ground, like from the movies. Like, it's so bad.
But
there's still so much that we can talk about.
We'll still be yapping.
We're not a 2-episode pod.
No, we'll be back, and we'll definitely be back full force for 2025. I think there's going to be so many conversations in January as well. So this is going to be exciting.
But follow us on all of our socials. Sunday Slipstream Pod on TikTok,
YouTube, and Instagram.
Yep.
Bye.